First of all, I'd like to say thank you to the English Democrats for inviting the campaign for an English Parliament to speak once again at your conference. We do have a common cause between us, and that is seeing England governed fairly and equally. We have moved forward, and I think that needs to be repeated. As a cause, we have moved forward. We are now discussing England and the lack of governance for England openly. We do not need to be put off by our opponents. But just as important as not being put off by our opponents is not to be put off by old acquaintances or old colleagues who have given up the fight. England is worth standing up for. England isn't going away. Our fight isn't about being overly enthusiastic and then disappearing. It's about grim determination. And that grim determination is paying off. Only this week, on March the 5th, the Constitution Unit, and I know it was mentioned earlier, produced a document looking at the options for an English Parliament. That was an 18-month study that finally, in writing, stated that our concerns, our grievances, were legitimate. That is a significant step forward. We have not had a political organisation or an academic organisation producing that type of evidence on our behalf. Our concerns, our grievances are legitimate. When our opponents say they're not, we have evidence to say that they are, and very clear evidence. And I would urge all of us who are involved in campaigning to read that report. It's a long report and it's heavy reading, and when I read it last week before the event, I have to say my wife did say that she couldn't believe that I was reading that on a Saturday night, and I did nearly fall asleep a couple of times because it is hard reading, but actually there is some gems within it. But what do we need to do? Because actually we have had a number of people contact the campaign for an English Parliament saying we're not doing enough, that we're not in the media, that these concerns aren't being addressed openly. Well, I say to the ones saying that we are trying our hardest, that actually the media is part of a British establishment making sure that English concerns, English grievances are not being discussed. But we need to keep going. We need to keep pushing. And I think the situation reminds me of a 2-year-old child hiding behind a curtain playing peekaboo. The parents know 100% that child can be seen, but that child shuts their eyes and they actually block their ears in saying they can't be seen by anyone, but the parents know. That is like the British government. The British government is hiding. It is shutting its eyes, blocking its ears to our grievances. They are foolish, because what we now know we have to do is make our voice stronger. We need to make sure that we are in their faces, that we are raising those grievances continually. What we've tried to do is try to now actually use different forms of highlighting how much they are refusing to listen. But I say to everyone, the only way you really know how bad that situation is, or the ignorance that we are coming across, is by joining us in campaigning. Social media has a place, but door-to-door, face-to-face conversations is where we change hearts and minds. In doing this, we have had to change some of our approaches. We are continually putting out press releases because we can't stop doing that, even though we know they are being ignored. So the campaign a few years ago set up, and it is independent from the campaign, but set up a network, a broadcasting network, called the English Broadcasting Network, which we've discussed before. But that has been a long and difficult road to take. We've had to learn quite a lot of stuff in the editing and making sure that our voice is heard appropriately within that. But it is vital. What we have known that when we have gone out on the streets to interview people is that they do not like the camera on them. They do not like their voices being recorded. This is because our opponents know the issues. They know they're ignoring our grievances. And, they refuse to talk to us, but we can highlight that. Two, when they come out with completely and utterly incorrect statements, we've highlighted that as well. It is worth our while investing and pushing that type of response to our opponents. But just as important is giving us a voice that is being denied us. So actually we attempt to actually look and discuss with people who are favourable to our cause and give them a good interview, a nice interview, where they're not being attacked, but actually are being asked the appropriate questions. But I have to emphasise, this does need finances, because it's actually money and time that is enabling us to get to the events across our country. But I'm going to highlight really why I believe this will work. And we have to go back 600 years ago. 600 years ago, in 1381, or during that time period, when the local working people of England were being ignored by an elite. That elite ignored them and ignored them and ignored them. So eventually there was a revolt. That revolt did change the way our country was governed. It was successful in many ways. But actually that elite, when you listen to it, were trying to actually implement taxes that were unfair. That rings very true to our time today. But actually, it took a long time. It took 30 years for one of the laws to be to the extent that people were prepared to stand up and be counted. Why did that revolt occur? That revolt occurred because there were agitators. There were people there who had been there from the beginning, continually highlighting what people were facing was wrong, unfair, and not equal. Those people remind me of the people in this room. People who can see the unfairness and the injustices, and who have been prepared to stand up and be counted. It is the long term that will see our aims come true. It is our determination to continue loving England and putting England first and highlighting her grievances.
Thanks ever so much for listening.
Thank you.